Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends and subscribe so you never miss another story. The day of the funeral felt heavier than the black suit on my shoulders. Our CEO, Edward, had been the heart of Ravens Park Ventures for over 3 decades, and his sudden passing left the entire company in grief. I walked into the cathedral with a sense of emptiness pressing against my ribs, the echoes of the choir bouncing off the marble walls like fragments of sorrow. Edward wasn't just my boss. He had been my mentor, the one who gave me a chance when I was just another ambitious director clawing for relevance in a city that never sleeps. I sat there quietly, hands folded, while faces I had seen in endless board meetings shifted uneasily in the pews. Some were mourning. Others I could tell were calculating. Leonard, the board chairman, stood stiff near the front, his hawkish eyes betraying no emotion. To his right was Marcus, always impeccably dressed, his smirk barely hidden behind a handkerchief. And beside him, Clara, elegant but sharp, her gaze cold and clinical as if Edward's death was merely another line on a corporate balance sheet. I had worked with them long enough to recognize when they were plotting something. Even in that moment of loss, I felt the sting of their silent judgment. After the funeral, when the sun had barely dipped behind the skyline, Leonard summoned me to his office. The smell of expensive cigars lingered in the room, even though he hadn't lit one yet. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Adrian," he said flatly, "the board has decided to make some changes. Effective immediately, your services are no longer required." The words slid across the table like a blade. I stared at him, trying to hold back the storm rising inside me. "You're firing me?" After Edward's funeral, my voice cracked with disbelief. Clara tilted her head, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's nothing personal. The company needs restructuring, and you've served your purpose." Marcus added with that smug tone I had always despised. "We're moving forward. You should take this as an opportunity to rest." Rest. That word burned me. They saw me as expendable, a piece on their chessboard they could shove aside whenever convenient. I kept my face still though inside I was raging. They thought they had stripped me of power. What they didn't know was that for 5 years, I had been quietly building something no one could touch. The truth was, after my wife Elena died from cancer, my world had shattered. Her medical bills had drained every savings account we had, and I knew I needed to secure my future. I had turned to trading, starting with a tiny account. I remember those long nights hunched over a dim laptop, studying candlestick charts until my eyes blurred. I taught myself technical analysis, studied trends, learned how to manage risk, and disciplined myself like a soldier. I would reinvest everything I earned, while living off my modest salary at Ravens Park. The market became my battleground. Each win was small at first, but they accumulated. I learned to wait during downturns, to be patient when others panicked. And slowly, that account grew into something I never imagined. $15 million. Enough to not just survive but to own. With that money I carefully bought Ravens Park shares. Not directly under my name, of course. I spread them across multiple brokerage accounts, hidden behind shell companies. A share here, another there. Always watching for estate sales or panic selling after a bad quarter. No one noticed. No one suspected. By the time Edward passed, I held 51% of Ravens Park Ventures. Quietly. Patiently. Legally. And Leonard, Clara, Marcus had no clue. As Leonard leaned back in his chair, dismissing me with the wave of his hand, I wanted to laugh. They were so blind, so arrogant, thinking they could erase me like chalk from a board. I stood slowly, buttoning my jacket. "Thank you for your time," I said calmly, though my fists were clenched. Clara smirked. Marcus chuckled. Leonard didn't even look at me as he scribbled something on his notepad. I walked out of that office with the taste of bile in my throat, but my steps were steady. They thought they had won. They thought I was finished. But I carried a secret that could change everything. The drive home was a blur of city lights and heavy silence. My apartment felt colder than usual, the framed picture of Elena staring back at me from the shelf. I picked it up, running my thumb over her smile. "They don't know Elena," I whispered. "They think I'm powerless. But you'd be proud. I'm ready." That night I sat at my desk and opened the folders I had been keeping for years. Statements, records, certificates, proof of my ownership. Every number lined up perfectly. 51%. I had never revealed it, never needed to until now. But the time had come. I thought back to Edward's words during one of our last conversations. He had leaned in close, his voice gravelly but warm. Adrian, power isn't about the noise you make. It's about the patience you keep. When the time comes, you'll know. The time had come. I spent the next few days in silence preparing. I knew Leonard would call a board meeting soon. He loved dramatic announcements, especially when he thought he held all the cards. And I would be there, quiet at first, until the moment I revealed what none of them saw coming. On Thursday evening I received the email. Friday 10 a.m., boardroom meeting.
Agenda, restructuring proposals.
My termination would likely be presented officially, wrapped in corporate jargon, sealed with smug approval from Clara and Marcus. I closed the email and leaned back in my chair, feeling my pulse steady. I had been patient for years. Tomorrow patience will turn into power. Friday morning arrived like the calm before a storm. The city outside my window hummed with its usual rhythm. Cars honking, people rushing, coffee carts steaming on the sidewalks. But inside me there was only a sharp, controlled anticipation. I dressed in my usual navy suit, straightened the tie Elena had bought me years ago, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see a man being pushed around by circumstance. I saw someone who had quietly built a fortress brick by brick, and today I was ready to open the gates. When I stepped into the Ravens Park building, the air was different. Whispers floated around the lobby like restless spirits. Everyone knew Leonard was about to unveil his grand restructuring plan, and rumors of layoffs had already poisoned the atmosphere. Eyes followed me as I walked toward the elevator, some sympathetic, some curious, and others already treating me like a ghost of the company. I kept my expression calm, even though every step made my heart thud harder. The boardroom was lit by the morning sun that filtered through tall glass windows. Leonard was already there, standing at the head of the table, his posture rigid with authority. Clara sat to his right, flipping through her notes with mechanical precision, while Marcus leaned back in his chair, grinning like he was about to watch his favorite performance. Other board members trickled in, faces anxious, waiting to hear what would become of their futures. Adrian, Leonard said curtly as I entered, his tone dismissive. You're still here. Good. At least you'll witness the direction the company is heading. I pulled out a chair at the far end of the table and sat down quietly. Wouldn't miss it, I replied evenly. The meeting began with Leonard droning on about efficiency, modernization, and tough but necessary decisions. His voice was smooth but hollow, the kind of voice that could convince a crowd while stripping them bare at the same time. He spoke of layoffs, of shutting down certain departments, of cutting research budgets, all while framing it as a fresh vision for Ravens Park. Clara nodded at every word, adding her icy statistics to reinforce the argument. Marcus chimed in with exaggerated enthusiasm, pretending it was all about innovation when everyone knew it was about control and money. When Leonard finally said, "And as of today, Adrian's role as director will be dissolved," a silence fell across the room. Some of the members shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting toward me with pity. Others just kept their gazes fixed on the table, too afraid to look. I took a breath, allowing the pause to stretch long enough that they began to feel uneasy. Then I leaned forward, placing a thick folder on the table. The sound echoed through the room like a gavel striking wood. "Before you proceed," I said calmly, "there's something you all need to know." Leonard raised an eyebrow, annoyed. "This is not your platform, Adrian. You've been dismissed. Kindly sit down, Leonard." My voice was sharper than I intended, but it had the desired effect. He froze, taken aback by the authority in my tone. Every eye turned toward me. I opened the folder slowly, sliding out documents one by one, laying them across the table. "For the past 5 years, while you've been busy plotting and scheming, I've been building. Quietly, patiently. And today I hold 51% of Ravens Park Ventures." The silence that followed was deafening. Clara blinked rapidly, her composure cracking. Marcus sat up straight, the smirk wiped clean from his face. Leonard's jaw tightened, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. That's impossible, he muttered, his voice unsteady. I pushed the papers toward him, ownership certificates, brokerage statements, all neatly organized. All legal. All documented. Spread across multiple accounts, shell companies, estate acquisitions. You never saw it because you never thought I was worth watching. One of the board members, Mrs. Alvarez, leaned closer, scanning the documents with wide eyes. He's telling the truth, she whispered, her voice carrying through the room. Leonard's face turned crimson. You manipulated. I invested. I cut him off sharply. While you were bleeding the company with your arrogance, I was putting my faith in it. I believed in Ravens Park when you treated it like your personal kingdom. I let my gaze travel across the boardroom. And while you were planning to fire me today, I was planning to protect this company from you. Clara's voice trembled as she tried to recover her poise. You can't just walk in here and... I own the majority, I interrupted, my voice low but firm. Which means I can and I will. Gasps spread across the table. A few of the directors who had remained quiet throughout the meeting now looked at me with a mix of shock and relief. They had been afraid of Leonard's dominance, but now they saw a new center of gravity forming before them. I turned my gaze back to Leonard, Clara, and Marcus. You wanted restructuring? Fine. Let's restructure. Effective immediately, Leonard, you are removed as chairman. Clara, Marcus, your services are terminated. You'll have security escort you out after this meeting. Marcus jumped to his feet, his voice trembling with outrage. You can't do this. I've been loyal to this company. Loyal to your own pockets, I said coldly. I have proof of the deals you were planning to push through, the layoffs you disguised as efficiency, the cuts to research just so you could funnel profits into your personal ventures. I tapped the folder again. Every word, every email, every scheme documented. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Clara tried to speak, but her voice broke. Leonard just stared at me, his lips pressed so tightly together they turned white. For once, the man who thrived on control was utterly powerless. I rose from my chair, the air in the room shifting as I stood tall. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I call for an immediate vote of no confidence in Leonard, Clara, and Marcus. Hands went up around the table, one after another, faster than I expected. The fear of Leonard's reign was replaced by the certainty of my ownership. It was unanimous. I looked directly at Leonard as the final hand lifted. You're done. He slammed his fist on the table, his voice shaking with rage. You'll regret this, Adrian. My name is Adrian, I said quietly, leaning closer so only he could hear. And I've already spent 5 years making sure I don't regret anything. The door opened and security entered, their expressions grim but firm. Clara's face crumbled as they approached her. Marcus sputtered protests, his arms flailing as they tried to guide him out. Leonard didn't move at first. He just glared at me, his eyes burning with hate, until finally, he pushed back his chair and stormed toward the door. As they were escorted out, I turned back to the remaining members. This company doesn't belong to greed. It doesn't belong to a handful of people cutting corners for personal gain. It belongs to everyone who has built it, worked for it, believed in it. From this day forward, we will not sacrifice research for profits, or loyalty for ego. We will build long-term value, not quick gains. The room was quiet, but I could see hope flickering in their faces. For the first time in years, they saw a path forward that wasn't drenched in fear and corruption. I sat back down in my chair, folding my hands on the table. The storm had passed, but the battle was far from over. I had revealed my hand, and now I held the throne. The question was how I would use it. The boardroom still felt like it was vibrating from the storm that had just passed, though the silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced in that building. It was the kind of silence that comes after chains are broken. The members sat straighter, the fear that had hung over them replaced with the possibility of something new. I watched their faces, some relieved, some still processing, and some quietly ashamed that they hadn't spoken up sooner against Leonard and his crew. But none of that mattered anymore. The old era was over. I leaned back in my chair, letting my fingers brush against the polished surface of the table. I didn't feel the rush of triumph I thought I would. Instead, there was a deep, steady calm. For years I had been patient, methodical, moving in silence. Now that everything was in the open, I felt lighter. Like Elena had whispered into my ear, telling me I had finally done what I was meant to do. The board looked at me, waiting. "So," I said, my voice steady, "let's begin again." That afternoon, I called an emergency company-wide meeting. The auditorium was packed with employees, engineers, researchers, marketers, janitors, and assistants, all buzzing with nervous energy. Everyone had heard whispers of what had happened in the boardroom, though no one had the full story. When I stepped onto the stage, a hush fell over the crowd. Hundreds of eyes fixed on me, some cautious, others hopeful. "I know you've heard rumors," I began, my voice echoing through the hall. "And yes, there's truth to them. Leonard, Clara, and Marcus are no longer with Ravens Park Ventures. Effective immediately, I am assuming the role of CEO." Gasps rippled through the room. I raised my hand for quiet. "I know this is sudden, but hear me out. This company has been run like a playground for greed, and you've all felt the weight of those decisions. Layoffs threatened your livelihoods, cuts in research crippled your innovation, and fear was used to keep you silent. That ends today." The words rolled off my tongue with more conviction than I thought I had. I let them breathe in the silence before continuing. "This company was built not by titles or corner offices, but by the work each of you put in every single day. And starting now, you will never have to look over your shoulder wondering if your job is next. Research will be funded, departments will be supported, and loyalty will be rewarded. I am here to build Ravens Park for the long term, not to strip it bare for profit." The room erupted in applause. Not polite clapping, but thunderous, heartfelt clapping that shook the walls. I stood there and let it wash over me, fighting the sting in my eyes. I thought of Elena in that moment, how proud she would be to see me not just surviving, but leading with the very values we had built our life around. Of course, revenge was not complete until the world outside those walls saw the truth of Leonard, Clara, and Marcus. Over the next weeks, I released evidence to regulatory agencies of the deals they had tried to push through. Their names hit the papers, splashed across headlines. Ravens Park scandal, former executives under investigation. What once had been smug smiles on magazine covers became mugshots of disgrace. The same hands that used to grip glasses of champagne now trembled as they signed legal defense papers. Marcus lost the lavish penthouse he boasted about, selling it to cover debts when his accounts were frozen. Clara disappeared from the corporate scene. Whispers of her failed attempts to land consulting work trailing behind her like shadows. Leonard, his fall was the hardest. Once revered as an untouchable chairman, he was now a man who couldn't step into a restaurant without whispers following him. I heard he started drinking heavily, retreating into the kind of silence he used to weaponize against others. I didn't gloat. Revenge isn't always about dancing on graves, it's about watching those who thought they were gods shrink into mortals, brought down by their own arrogance. I had given them enough rope, and they had hung themselves with it. As for me, I refused the grand corner office. I kept my modest space, the same small office where I had eaten countless peanut butter and jelly sandwiches during late nights of planning trades. The staff offered me luxurious perks, but I waved them away. Power didn't interest me in the way it had consumed Leonard. For me, power has always been about patience, control, and the ability to protect. The company began to transform. With renewed research funding, new projects flourished. Morale climbed higher than it had in years. Employees who once kept their heads down now walked the halls with energy and pride. I made it a point to walk through those halls myself, greeting people by name, asking about their work, and sometimes even sitting down in the cafeteria to share a meal. But late at night, when the building was quiet and the city lights blinked through my window, I often thought back to the moment in Leonard's office when he told me I was no longer required. That memory didn't sting anymore. Instead, it reminded me why I had chosen patience all along. Because real power isn't the noise of firing someone, it's the silence of owning the ground beneath their feet. Months later, during an investor conference, I stood on stage representing Ravens Park as its new leader. When the Q&A opened, one reporter asked if I had any advice for young entrepreneurs. I smiled, letting the pause stretch before answering. Patience, I said. Patience is not weakness. It's a strategy. You don't always have to be the loudest in the room. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. And that was the truth. Leonard, Clara, and Marcus became cautionary tales lectures in business schools, examples in seminars about corporate governance gone wrong. Their downfall was etched into the history of Ravens Park, a reminder that arrogance and greed always meet their reckoning. As for me, I sat in my quiet office, spreading peanut butter over bread, listening to the hum of a company alive again. I didn't need a feast to feel satisfied. My feast was watching Ravens Park rise, stronger than before, built not on fear but on loyalty and competence. That was enough. Hello guys, thank you for listening to this story. If you've learned anything, let it be this. Real strength is not in greed, nor in the noise of control, but in the patience to build silently until the right moment comes. Don't ever let others convince you that silence is weakness. Sometimes silence is the greatest form of power. So please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and drop a comment about what lesson stood out most to you. Your perspective might be the very encouragement someone else needs today.
Moral lesson.
Patience is often mistaken for weakness, but true patience is strategy clothed in silence. In a world that rewards loudness, there is profound strength in those who wait, observe, and prepare. Leonard, Clara, and Marcus chased power through shortcuts, greed, and arrogance, but they lost everything because they failed to value loyalty, vision, and discipline. Adrian's journey reminds us that life's greatest victories are not always won in haste, but in deliberate, careful steps that build foundations no one can shake. It is in the quiet nights of effort, the sacrifices made without recognition, that true empires are forged. This story is not just about revenge, it is about resilience, about turning pain into purpose, and betrayal into resolve. When others dismiss you, underestimate you, or even cast you aside, let their arrogance fuel your discipline. Work in silence. Build patiently. Wait for your moment, because when it comes, it will be undeniable. To everyone listening, remember this. Success is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Let your patience, competence, and integrity be the revenge that speaks louder than any words.